crucial organisms fundamentally to our ability to survive on Earth. And none of the archaea can do this. They're the one group of bacteria that can, and they also, none of the archaea can. Every mode of nutrition and metabolism is represented by the bacteria. The cyanobacteria just have one of these modes of nutrition and metabolism that we're going to focus on, and they're responsible for not only our food but also for our atmosphere. So the oxygen-rich atmosphere that we have today was not some sort of development from evolution of the world in a physical sense. It was the evolution of the world in a biological sense that led to our oxygen-rich atmosphere. And the cyanobacteria basically are converting CO2 plus water to sugars and oxygen. Oxygen is their waste product. Of course, we depend on it for respiration. And that oxygen-rich atmosphere was really in place about 1.8 billion years ago and allowed for the evolution of animals in addition to other life forms. They're also critical for nitrogen fixation. So most of our atmosphere, as far as its elemental composition, is nitrogen gas. But nitrogen gas is not available to us, and it's not available to plants and photosynthetic organisms for the most part. But cyanobacteria, as well as some other bacteria in the proteobacteria clade, are able to take gaseous nitrogen, inorganic nitrogen, and convert it to ammonia, basically fixed nitrogen, and then it's subsequently other bacteria, other microbes convert it to a form that we can utilize. So nitrogen is crucial for nucleic acids, for example, like DNA and RNA. It's a crucial component of those nitrogenous bases, and they're a big part of DNA and RNA. It's also part of our proteins in some cases, so nitrogen is crucial to life, and these cyanobacteria are big players in all of that. Okay, as far as the diversity of life modes that the bacteria represent, we're just going to talk about three major modes here that can be broken up into two major types of existence on the planet. This cuts across all organisms. So they're basically the autotrophs, which are the self-feeders. Troph means feeding, and auto means self. So basically the self-feeders, the ones that are producing their own food from inorganic sources or from physical sources of energy and inorganic compounds. So photoautotrophs are organisms like the cyanobacteria, all photosynthetic organisms, that are taking light energy and converting that light energy into sugar, basically by capturing carbon dioxide or other inorganic carbon sources and fixing that carbon using light energy into sugars or other organic substances, as I mentioned with the byproduct of oxygen. Another type of autotroph, though, are organisms that we're not going to be talking about for the rest of the semester, but are well represented by bacteria as well as archaea, and these are chemolithotrophs. These are literally organisms that eat rocks. Litho refers to rock or an inorganic substrate. So these organisms that are living off of basically oxidizing inorganic matter, like the hydrogen sulfide we talked about, or ammonia, or ferrous ions, and through oxidation they're releasing energy and using that energy to fix carbon. So we have two different major classes here, or types of autotrophs that are primary producers that are producing fixed carbon, basically food, using inorganic starting materials and physical energy. Whereas heterotrophs are organisms that are feeding off of organic substances that were made available by other life forms. So that's basically us. That's the way we live. We're dependent upon organisms. We're dependent ultimately on the primary producers, these autotrophs, for our survival. So we're using carbon molecules or carbon compounds that are organic, with a major distinction between inorganic and organic being that organic are compounds that are associated with living organisms that are basically produced by living organisms. Any questions about that before we move on? Okay, so as far as the classification goes, this three-domain system that I just briefly introduced with the two prokaryotic groups and then the eukaryotic groups, here's how it compares to the five-kingdom system. As I mentioned, the bacteria are not the only monerans. We're also these archaea, which we previously treated as bacteria, include a lot of the extremophiles. The eukaryotes are not broken up here into additional domains, not because there aren't some good, well-recognized clades there that are very deep clades, but because these four major groups don't correspond very well to the deep structure of the phylogeny of eukaryotes. And this is what the tree of life really looks like in sort of its fundamental way. Here's where the root would be attached. Here are the bacteria. Here are the archaea, the two major prokaryotic groups, and here are the eukaryotes here. And this diagram is taken from the Tree of Life website, and I definitely recommend checking that out, because there you'll find extensive write-ups on every recognized clade in the Tree of Life, every major clade. It's a really nice resource. There you can find a lot about groups we won't even be talking about in this class. But here you can see the major three macroscopic groups that we associate with terrestrial life on Earth: the fungi, the animals, and the land plants. And you can see that they represent just really minor twigs in this overall eukaryotic Tree of Life, which is broken up into five major clades. We're not really going to be talking about the viruses. You might have wondered about where they fall out in this whole system. And the reality is that we're not quite sure. And so they're excluded from the system because viruses are very difficult to classify. They're highly reduced. We're confident that they evolved from living forms, but we're not quite sure how. Part of the problem is that they're inert unless they're in the presence of living cells. And they have such a small amount of either DNA or RNA, whichever they use as their main genetic information. There's such a small number of nucleotides there that there's not much evidence of the relationships, and they evolve incredibly quickly. They're under very strong selection, and they cycle really quickly in terms of generation time. So their DNA evolves so fast that their phylogenetic signal is lost quickly. So we're not quite sure how they fit in, but they're definitely critically important. So the organisms that we call plants, or I should say plants and fungi, these botanical organisms, just getting back to this question of what is a plant, you can see it's not easy to answer. The fungi traditionally were considered plants. They're one of these clades. The algae, which basically are all the photosynthetic organisms except for the land plants, they're all these orange circle groups here. So one major group of bacteria, the cyanobacteria, which used to be called blue-green algae, and then we have all of these groups of algae here that fall out, in addition to the land plants here, in four of the five major eukaryotic clades. So they're scattered all over the tree of life, and it's the most polyphyletic assemblage you can imagine. So the plants are, if you don't know, if you have a hard time categorizing plants, it's because plants are not really a natural group. Okay, so the fungi, we're honing in on them here. We're going to focus on them first. They're very distantly related to land plants, and in fact, they independently evolve multicellularity relative to land plants. So they're an independent example of multicellularity. They're more closely related to unicellular life forms than they are to plant multicellular plants, and they're more closely related to animals than they are to any of the photosynthetic organisms. And we can see that relationship when we look at their motile cells. So if we look at the zoospores, for example, of chytrids, and we'll look at them shortly, type of fungi, they have posterior flagellae attached at the posterior end of those reproductive cells, just like the sperm cells of animals. So think of a sperm cell in an animal, the flagellum is attached at the posterior end, whereas in algae and land plants, the flagellae are attached at the anterior end, at the front end. So there are some similarities there. And that split is about 1 billion years ago, which may sound like a long time ago, but they share a much more distant relationship with any of the photosynthetic groups. And the fungi are really extraordinary organisms that we're going to spend next lecture focusing on in detail. They've often had sort of a mystical, supernatural association, and there's a great reason for it because they really are extremely bizarre. They're not like you and me. They're not like animals. They're not like any of the photosynthetic organisms. They're really very strange in their metabolism and their lifestyle. So we'll get to that next time. So good luck tonight on the midterm, and we'll see you back here on Monday, or hopefully at office hours today if you can come by.